Welcome to That Annuity Show, the podcast that will make you an expert in explaining annuities to your clients. Give us 30 minutes each week and we'll shave hours from your client presentations. Now, here's your host, Paul Tyler.
Hi, this is Paul Tyler, and welcome to another episode of That Annuity Show. Bruno, how are you?
I'm very good. Thank you, Paul.
Good. Coming in clear from Canada. This is great today.
Always happy to be here.
Yeah. Tisa, how are you?
Doing good. We've got snow here in the Connecticut area, but snow day, but doing good.
Indeed we do. Ramsey, it's the first time it's snowed in forever.
Yeah.
Missed it.
I think we sent it your way. It was raining like crazy here for a couple days, but now the sun's just coming out. So You're welcome.
All right. Well, good. Hey, listen, we got a really interesting episode with a great guest today. Just to sort of connect the dots with some of our previous shows, Bruno, what's the most important thing about life insurance, right? It's got to be claims, right? That's at the end of the day what we're doing is paying checks or income payments or death claims, and that's there's no more sort of fundamental purpose in our business, yet it's a hard one to it's hard to do right. Tisa, we've had a couple of conversations, right, with people who've explained how it can be disruptive in terms of cross-generational relationships, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. So today we have somebody who's actually trying to fix that. It's Ron Gura. Ron, I hope I pronounced your name correctly, co-founder and CEO at Empathy. Thank you so much for joining us today.
It's great to be here. I always dreamed about being on a podcast with the word annuity in it, and now I'm.
Today's your day.
Indeed, it is. SEO is going to go through the roof. The SEO will go through the roof here. So
absolutely, I'm excited to be here, and eventually talk about just that big moment of truth. That's what a claim really is, right? It's a premise. It's more than just financial peace of mind. What else happened? So that's where we come in, and excited to talk about that and what's happening in life insurance.
Yeah. Well, this is great. So, first of all, tell people what is Empathy and what does your company do?
Sure thing. So Empathy is primarily the friend you wish you had when you lose a loved one. That's how I'd love people to really think about it. It's not just a friend. It's that knowledgeable neighbor that happens to be an ex-estate lawyer, but now maybe also a social worker. And is really, really experienced with winding down the affairs of a loved one, but also helping you get back on your feet again. That's really what we're trying to do here. Save people, families, time and money and stress when the inevitable happens. And as you know, Paul, better than most, it happens. It doesn't escape any of us. It's the inescapable truth. But at the same time, it's the single largest consumer sector that is, for some reason, untouched. Untouched by innovation, untouched by technology, unspoiled by software, really. And I think we can all agree the reason it's untouched is not some regulatory barrier or technology barrier. It's just us here on the call, us humans, trying really hard, so hard, not to think about loss, not to contemplate our own self-mortality. And we believe here at Empathy that, like any other taboo topic, this one should be broken down as well. And if we put the right technology in place with the right amount of human touch, we can really change the market and empower people during what we believe is life's most challenging moments.
So tell us a little bit about your journey. You've touched a lot of different areas, the innovation space, various startups. Tell us about how that journey informs your approach to empathy.
So yeah, I'm a consumer internet person. I'm not a life insurance expert. I play my ignorance for what it's worth and get to be the outsider in a lot of meetings, asking funky questions like, hey, didn't that claimant beneficiary who just called you, isn't that a good lead? Isn't that an adult child, stranger, who's not your customer, calling you, giving you all of his information, All of his data, chasing you again, giving you more data, telling you he's at need money you know you have, money you know he's going to get in a few weeks, big liquidity event, bigger than probably any other big event he's going to have. And what are you going to do? Like, you're going to do what? You're going to send him the check and do more Super Bowl ads? The guy's right here. So a glass of wine as you wait for your table is really how I look at this from an outsider view. Like, what's going on? Isn't this weird that the only industry within insurance where the beneficiary is not the policyholder, technically, is people don't think about it. Of course, if a PNC claim, that's a renewal moment. Like, someone's going to give you really good service. And don't get me wrong, paying effectively and accurately and with sympathies is good service. And a lot of carriers, I think, they wear their heart on their sleeves and they try to do good in this neutral negative event. But long story short, it's not enough. And from a background standpoint, that's me. I'm a consumer intent person. I've been going in and out from startups that usually I get to start myself as a naive person. I get to wear my pink rose glasses all the time. And in and out from bigger companies. I had the chance to have meaningful executive roles at eBay and PayPal and WeWork. And always very much focused on the product and the consumer. In terms of what led me to this, I think, well, nobody starts an end-of-life company without having their fair share of loss. I had my fair share of loss, definitely. I can share with you that while probably not the final trigger, definitely the earliest one was losing my brother at an early age, Amir. That completely changed family dynamics. My single mom with 3 opinionated, playful boys, over energetic Israeli boys who grew up in Haifa, northern Israel. And my brother Amir, my middle brother, was diagnosed with a very severe and aggressive type of cancer. And after he passed away, I vividly remember one Saturday morning, my mom literally taking a key and locking his door, which remained locked for the next 15 years, and was a very vivid and clear representation and reminder of what happened, and also how we're shutting it down, not to be talked about in many ways. We've no complaints on my mom's side here, but it's the first time I understood nobody wants to talk about loss. Kids usually get it from watching Lion King for the first time and understand, kind of losing their faith in humanity, lions, and uncles at the same time. But they have a lot of questions. Kids, I got 2 daughters myself now, Tom and Danny, and 9 and 6 years old. They ask a lot of questions, and sometimes after Disney movies, they do ask me questions about mortality and life and death, and they kind of move on. But I didn't. I made my mom's life very difficult. I've been asking questions again and again and again. And then I had more loss, friends, colleagues, natural loss, even friends from the army. But it was actually only after eBay acquired my first startup, the Gifts Project, and I was a young product director at eBay. One of my employees lost his wife to cancer. And I showed up in an apartment in Milpitas, San Jose, knowing that I don't know what to expect, knowing that it's going to be very different than my community, my religion, my experience. but didn't know how different. He was by himself with a suit, shaved, doing probate paperwork, asking me about when do I need him back. That was really a big aha moment for me. That was when I took my black notebook and said, oh, that's weird. Like, why don't we have anything for this? Like, we need Headspace for grief, but we really need TurboTax for estate settlement. And we kind of need both. And we kind of can't decouple the two. Grief is made hard by logistics. Logistics are made harder by grief. And I don't get the luxury of choosing one of them and say, oh, I'll do a fintech product that is only pre-filling your probate stuff. That's not going to be something people want to talk about or use such an emotional period. So long story short, 3.5 years ago, my co-founder and I, Jan, started Empathy. We're now 80 people between New York headquarters and Tel Aviv R&D Center. We have $48 million in venture capital from tier one folks like General Catalyst, Aleph, Entree, and others. We work with MetLife, New York Life, Guardian, many other, dozens of other carriers, dozens of big employers, progressive employers who want to show up for their teams. And what I think we're doing more than anything else is putting a spotlight on this taboo topic and creating, hopefully, a very empowering workflow of continuity of care.
Maybe talk to us a little bit about the workflow. We have people listen who are some people on the group side. We've got some people on the individual side. Of course, we always look at it from our own lens, right? At the end of the day, it's a person. Mm-hmm. Suffered a loss is getting checked. Maybe talk about the customers on either end. Like if I'm I'm an employee and I've had a policy, or I guess my loved one was an employee and I've got a policy check, or I'm a beneficiary. How does that workflow feel to a person who's a beneficiary?
So the tiny differences. The differences would mostly be on the touch points. We do a no-code, simple implementation. We learned the hard way that the one thing that is more expensive to carriers than money is IT resources. I think it's a big lesson for us. And since we got that, we shifted to a no-code implementation and added more than 14 carriers in 14 months. And that was a big aha moment for us and what drove a lot of our 4X growth in 2023. We add a few multifaceted, simple touch points. For example, the script on that call, sorry for your loss, but we're not going anywhere. That insert on the brochure, on the snail mail with the QR code. Hey, if you need anything at all, scan this. Email that says, number one, we got your claim. Number two, you're eligible for 24/7 bereavement care. So these simple touch points didn't require any data transfer. We don't need to know the social security. We don't need to know the face value. We don't want to know if Ms. Jones was rich or poor. We want to democratize access for grief and estate administration. So when you think about group and individual, it's just those touch points that are slightly different. The bereaved next of kin, who cares? Like they're dealing with so much. Who cares if they got the policy from New York Life GBS or New York Life individual? It's group or individual. You still have probate, funeral, grief, sleep support, mood tracking, social security, IRA, deactivation of social media, deactivation of accounts, banks, selling the property, fighting with your sister, doing estate tax, thinking about identity theft, and, just 50 other topics from veteran administration all the way to IRAs. So when someone passes away, it's overwhelming. We publish every January the cost of dying report to create more awareness on the full implications on us as individuals and as a society for the employer cost, the financial cost, the emotional cost. You can see that on empathy.com. And it's 50 pages of infographics that are basically showing us it's more than a year of work to wind down the affairs of a loved one on average It's more than 400 hours of direct work. Of course, from a group standpoint, of course, your employee has a second job. He can't bring his whole self back to work. Of course, from an individualized standpoint, that glass of wine as you wait for your table makes a lot of sense when you are thinking about generational loyalty and asset retention and NPS, because what other moment of truth do you have that is bigger than someone calling in and saying, I lost a loved one. Where is my money? Of course, you need to have the money ready. That's the 90%. That life insurance is still about financial protection. But people expect much more. And we hope they will. I hope they will continue to expect much more. Right now, 1 out of 7 claimants in the U.S. is getting more from empathy.
So is the solution, I don't want to call it a product because that doesn't give it the right name, but the experience, let's call it the experience. Is it branded according to the carriers? Is it branded as empathy? So is it white label, or are the carriers able to carry their own brand?
So it's both. It's a co-branded experience. I'll just give you a quick example if we're already on video. So I'm gonna kind of pop my empathy app, and one of our carriers is gonna pop as a covered by. And then inside the experience, you're going to have both the digital app, you're going to have your care team service element, 24/7, especially social workers and more that are available for discussion. But you're going to have other places where you understand this is coming from this carrier specifically, and can even create a lead back to them at the right time in the least intrusive way possible, the exact opposite from an agent calling after the loss and say, hey, what about you? This is actually about first thing first, cementing trust and showing up. First, let me save you some time and money and stress. First, let me offer you a glass of wine. Then let's check what's going on with the table. First, make sure that you got what you need right now. If that's funeral comparison, if that's estate tax, if that's cleaning the property, whatever advice or support you need, you got it. Then when you're ready to talk about your financial legacy, your family, of course, the same carrier that sent you to empathy would love to continue that conversation with you. And why not?
So how much of the logistics? So there's the psychological element of it. But of all the long list of logistical hurdles you have to go through that you mentioned before, how many of those are you providing sort of specific intervention on to make those steps easier?
I'd say it's half of what we do. We do the filing for petition for probate. We do the preparing for the house for vacancy. We close and deactivate accounts and cancel subscription. We give you a dedicated personal care plan that is personalized for you, Arizona or New Jersey, 5 siblings or none, Jewish or Muslim, executor or not. We help with the eulogy, with the obituary, with the funeral, the debts, the notifications of loss, the Social Security, the IRAs, the purchasing of a headstone, all the way to the bonds, the credit bureaus. So it's a long list of tens of items in the administrative side, probably 100-something items that you need help with. Every one of them could be quickly 5 other items. So we don't just tell you what to do. We actually do it for you and with you.
Got it.
Tisa, could you have used this?
Yes. So I experienced a significant loss in August of 2021. As a middle-aged adult, it was my first major loss, so I'm grateful for that. But because it was my first major loss, it was a long process. So I think it took 2.5 years. We just closed probate. But we just did. I don't know. What's this? This is February. Maybe it was right before Christmas. So as I'm listening to you speak, Ron, thinking through all of it feels very real. I guess I have a couple of follow-up questions. One of my questions was, I heard you say bereavement care, I think is what you said. So I wanted to dig into a little bit of the services under that umbrella, but I think you probably just spoke about that a little bit. I guess I'm curious, looking at the mobile app that you showed that is claimant or beneficiary focused. What are the resources, or what is the version of that app, if any, look like for the agent? Like, what sort of support or guide or talk track are you giving to the agent so that they can handle that claim experience differently? Say the things differently, do the things differently to still cultivate the lead, but in that way that's not intrusive, to use your word, and in a way that sort of shifts their thinking about the opportunity in that moment of truth. If you could talk a little bit about that.
First thing, I'm sorry to hear about your loss and the process that you're going through, and 2.5 years in, might feel like a lot of time to do the administration, but it's actually very normal on the executor side. Like when we're talking about 18 months average, it's including a lot of folks that are not the official executor. Once you are and you're actually going through probate, 2 years plus is very regular in the U.S., unfortunately. And
in particular, when everyone lives in different states where they grew up. Don't cross a state line, because that adds, months, years.
That's also not very rare in the United States. And just even having one piece of property in Arizona and a motorcycle in New Jersey, and that's it. Like you're going through a whole new fun process, and we help pre-fill that. So on your questions, first, bereavement care is really the emotional side of everything we do. So there was really just the two halves that I was mentioning before. And on the emotional side, I would split it also into the product and the service. The product would be everything you would imagine a wellness app to do in 2024, but tailored for grief. So grief coaching, grief meditation, grief music, audios, podcasts, videos, thousands of articles about any topic, from as small as how do I tell the kids all the way to a specific probate petition in New York City. So that would be mood tracking and sleep support, and of course a lot of self-reflections and healing. At the same time, anything the app can't do just yet, or if you need anything, 24/7 bereavement care with our care managers. That could be 2 a.m., can't fall asleep, or it could be middle of your workday when you ran out of a conference room to cry in the bathroom because you feel guilty. You call us. We take those calls.
Wow.
You can chat on the app. You can talk on the phone. We're always there. You're never alone when you have empathy.
It's very comprehensive.
Yeah, it is. And, just double clicking on something you said, because we do have a lot of distributors and stuff on the line. You said, you kind of like insert the opportunity for an agent to actually help somebody through the financial process at the right time. I'd like to understand that a little more. And just to give you my backstory, I worked at MetLife when Met was, actually had a retail division, it was, and we had a whole program called Delivering the Promise, which was delivering the death claim check. And, two observations there. One is any agent who actually gets to deliver a death claim check will be an agent for life. It was a transformative experience. I think a lot of agents are selling the product. You never actually get to see the product getting used. And those who are lucky enough to actually see this, it was a huge event in their life to deliver that and see the product actually works. Now, to flip that side, it was also a very competitive process because, as you said, it's a massive event financially for somebody. A lot of big liquidity event, maybe one of the biggest ones they'll have in their lives. How do you do this appropriately? Now, we screened agents. This is not something you just sort of drew a number for. We had to You had to get approved. You had to go through a coaching process. You had to learn how to do this, how to talk to us about how and when do you digitally start that conversation? When, to Tisa's point, is it month, I think this is horrible, month 15, or is it month 16, or is it something that happened along the way that you say, okay, now's the right time to do that?
So first thing I can tell you that while MetLife did decouple from the retail business, they still deliver on the promise, and they do it on the group side. I got to know the organization very closely, and the way they show up for their national accounts and employers and support the next of kin of the employees is very, very unique, very efficient, and I think very comprehensive. And when that happens, it's really no different, like I said, between an individual and a group. You are still going through all of this, even if your loved one was a Nike employee or a Google employee, or never was a freelancer and never had a group life care. It's still a loss of a loved one. From the agent perspective, the shortest explanation I can give, and probably a good summary of everything we do here, is taking a transaction and shifting into a relationship. That's really what this is about. We have this massive multi-trillion-dollar industry that is intermediated, that is lacking engagement. It's kind of, you have such amazing retention, relatively speaking, to SaaS products, but you don't really have any meaningful engagement with the policyholder. And even on the agent side, let's take a classic agents to business, probably 200 years old, some big mutual in the US, and 10,000, 20,000 agents, whatever the number is going to be, still 70% of the claimants are going to be unassigned, or how the industry likes to call them, but I don't, orphans, orphan claims. 70%, that's the number. We have a pretty good umbrella view on the entire industry with 7-digit volume of claims every year. So not even the largest carriers in the United States have 7 digits in claims volume. And I can tell you, even if you do the absolute best job as an agent, the chances of, my dad's agent to still be in business practicing when my dad passed away, just not likely. High net worth individuals, of course, different mechanics here, different physics. People make different efforts for obvious reasons. And while we don't differentiate, the market does. And you'll see people spend more time about generational loyalty and getting to know the son or the daughter. However, at the end of the day, agents are about top line. Agents are about my next deal. And talking to the bereaved family, showing compassion, it's a part of the job, but it's not my training. It's not something I'm uniquely positioned to do outside of the fact that I've seen it before. And my admin or myself are going to shift them to the claim center. And maybe have some extra layer of care, like, hey, how's it going? Do you need anything else? But there's a claim center. That's what's going to happen. What we do is when there's an agent involved on the 30%, we do everything around the agent. Agents are the heroes. So John Smith is sending empathy to Mrs. Jones. And everything is coming from him. If it's automated or not, he decides. He can send something every month. Every time, hey, I see you're making some progress on the will, on the probate. Do you need help with this? And provide just a series of emails that are coming branded from the agent. That's a big help for people. And I think the industry is aligned. And when there is an agent involved, you want to go for the agent. And we have a back office for them. To your question, Tis, this is what we do. I showed you a little bit of the consumer app, of course, but there's a whole different system for agents. They can add a phone number and one click. They get the whole experience, co-branded, agent front and center. There's even a letter from the agent waiting in there. So putting the agents front and center is very important.
That's great. It helps them build that relationship you talked about.
I mean, there's so many sort of interesting time-related issues to this sort of customer journey, right? So, Paul, you talked about the delivering the promise. So the first time gap is between the point of sale and the claim, which, things change. Maybe the agent's not in the business anymore. All right. So then you have the claim, very important point of delivering the promise, right? But everything else that you're talking about, Ron, around bereavement and settling the estate, and then at some point being ready for some further business relationship is essentially undefined, right? Mm-hmm. Ahead of time, at T0, it's undefined, and it could take months or weeks or years. And so that's a very interesting sort of part of the experience and how you manage that, how you figure out when it's time, and when it's time, to whom do you send that? Who ultimately gets that lead? Does it go back to the company? Does it go back to the same agent, or if that agent is gone, to somebody else? Like, what is the path for the further business relationship down the road?
So the last part is actually the easiest, right? Like the company defines if they want everyone to go to a central location, a phone, a digital form, easy to enhance and customize. Mm-hmm. It's within our 3 weeks implementation period. That's the easy part. But figuring out what and when to say to the beneficiary in order to put this in front of them, but not selling them, is really important. So
very hard.
I won't share exactly our unique data around when to surface what, but I will tell you that if someone is a few months in, it's not a secret that they're starting to think about the fact that, well, I'm next. There's a reason why 33% of the wills that people buy are after the loss of a loved one, usually a parent. It's that clear generational movement that people comprehend. And we want to surface that at the right time in the right place. People are understanding the implications of not having those sensible conversations with their loved one just a few weeks and months ago. They understand even if they had a will, even if they had insurance, they didn't have the iPhone password. They don't know what to do with the dog. They're not sure what's, you prefer cremation or not. They didn't have these conversations. And now they're thinking, you know what? I want to have all this information in place for my kid. They also get a big check and they have liquidity and they're well positioned to now make a big purchase like life insurance and a big commitment.
Yep.
And they kind of understand like that they're best positioned to understand the value of this industry because they get that check. And just like Paul said, an agent that delivered the check understand the value. A beneficiary that received the check understand what life insurance is. Until then, it's a financial tool. And for us, it's really important to surface that at the right time. People are reading. We have far more data points than an agent sitting at their office thinking, should I call Ms. Jones today or tomorrow? It's been 2 months or 3 months. We see what's going on and what state of mind she is and what can really add value to Ms. Jones. We will never do anything that is not 100% aligned with the beneficiary's best interest. I think if we do that once, we don't have a justification in this end-of-life category. And every employee that onboard here at Empathy, that's the first thing they read on their onboarding. If we lose track of our mission to help families deal with loss, we're just as good as the next predatory funeral home chain. Just another person trying to sell people something. But if we first and foremost say, wait, is this saving time and money and stress? Is this a good offer? Is this a good brand? Is this what the beneficiary wants to hear right now? They're gonna find this empowering to get support on probate. They're gonna find this empowering to get an agent call them and say, hey, here are your options in terms of your proceeds. Or maybe it's not the right time for that, and they're right now dealing with something very different. We know that. We're best positioned to know that more than the carrier, the agent, or any advisor.
Bruno, what are your thoughts?
Well, I was wondering, do you have any advice or any kind of low-hanging fruits of easy things people can do to save significant amount of time when those things happen?
Well, estate planning as a whole is something that pretty much 70% of Americans don't do. I can't say that's a low-hanging fruit. The folks that say it is, I would not necessarily trust them. People that say, 5 minutes and you're gone, easy, fast, affordable. Well, wills and trusts and guardianship documents should not be fast and affordable. They should be thoughtful. You should be thinking about your hierarchy of values. You should be opening a bottle of wine with your significant other and asking some really tough questions about who's going to raise the kids. However, even without proper documentation, having the conversation is a lot. Talking with your parents is a lot. Sometimes they will start talking back if you bring this up, but people don't want to talk about mortality. So the low-hanging fruit is break the taboo. Nothing to be ashamed of. This is literally like sex education in the 50s. Like, just the fact that we are running away from it doesn't mean it's not a thing and people don't want to and need the support and advice.
Break the taboo. I think we've got a title for our podcast here. Tisa,
Absolutely.
do you think that works?
That's a note to end on, or start to end on. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. The loss I referenced, a few minutes ago is exactly that. So thankfully, I had everything. My father had everything lined up, but it was the aha moment that, like, ooh, I'm a parent. I probably need to do something. So if something, so that the same experience could be for my child. So that is absolutely the reaction of getting your own affairs in order when you either probably witness a loved one not having their affairs in order and the impact it has to you, or having them in order and the impact that has to you. How much harder it could have been without things in place. So I totally agree with you there. And I think it's just a conversation, setting the expectations, making those wishes known. They are hard conversations to have. Having to ask my 14-year-old, who do you want to be with if mommy's not here? My heart's like pounding right now, even saying that again. But it's necessary. And I think it's kind of a similar, topics that are off limits, right? Like politics, religion, money, death. So, we shy away from having the conversations. They're uncomfortable sometimes, and we have differing values. But I think, to your point, like Bruno, your question of low-hanging fruit, and Ron, your answer of one of the easiest things yet hardest things to do is to have a conversation and start to talk about things. So I appreciate that advice. I hope it resonates with our listeners.
Yeah. Ramsey?
I've long been of the view that if there were a simple mathematical formula for the opportunity set in the insurance space, it would be experience greater than product. Just that. Like, that is the direction that I think in all sectors of our industry, whether it's
beautiful,
whether it's life, P&C, et cetera. That is where the greatest opportunity lies, both in terms of having happy customers for our existing businesses, but also to be able to extend our businesses into other areas. And Ron, you started out talking about just how you have this interesting situation in, like, in InsurTech generally. What ends up being the problem that blows up a lot of new companies is that their customer acquisition is too high, right? Then you have incumbents that have really deep relationships, even if they're not sort of but they're not really worked on explicitly. But there's these really deep relationships of trust that exist. There's people that are under the tent and depend on you. And I think there's great opportunity to expand those relationships over time if done properly.
Yeah. Hey, Ron, listen, thanks so much for your time. I think what you're building sounds like a wonderful service. I think, I've been through it twice with both parents, and I would have loved to have it as well. Little less recent than Tisa's experience, but what's the best way for people to learn more about your company? And if you're a carrier or distributor, you want to learn more about offering the product, where should they go?
Well, we'll keep it very simple. You go to empathy.com. You'll see our testimonials and case studies, our videos, our care team, our app. You can reach out to us for a demo. And I think really join the movement of more and more carriers who are embracing a new standard when it comes to beneficiary care. And we're very excited about the momentum in the U.S., expanding beyond the U.S. in 2024, and even beyond the life claims into additional adjacent categories that also include a moment of truth. And you'll be hearing more about that. But for now, empathy.com is really the simplest and easiest way to learn more about us.
Excellent. All right. Well, thanks so much. And I want to thank our listeners. Share the show. Recommend us to your friends. Give us feedback. And be sure to join us next week for another great episode of That Annuity Show. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for listening. If you've enjoyed the show, please rate and recommend us on iTunes, Stitcher, Overcast, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also get more information at thatannuityshow.com.